Mr. Cederburg, obviously you're the right man to talk to as Public Works is celebrating its 50th anniversary. You've been around here for 39 of those years, including the last 14 or 15 as the director. What's been the biggest changes or the biggest challenges that have taken place in those 50 years?
Well, the biggest thing that's taken place is obviously the growth in the valley. I mean, it was a very smaller community back in 1969. When the Public Works Department was formed, and today it's a community over 2 million people. So that's the growth. I mean, we're always chasing new developments. We're chasing Mountain's Edge development when they develop in the outlying areas. Summerlin was a very open area in the 1980s. Now it's out there, how many thousand acres? 2,000 acres of development in Summerlin. Those are big changes for a valley.
Talk about some other projects that have maybe been some of your favorite ones, or some of the ones that have really helped impact how we get around the valley.
Well, I think all the public works projects impact how we get around the valley. I mean, if you looked at the overall roadway network within the valley and saw it, 40 years ago, it's not what it is today. I mean, there's roads out there that have been extended, and a lot of the roads started from the core, and we just grew out from the core of the area, this downtown area with Bonanza, Owens, on the east side, Nellis, and then moving west, we did Rainbow, Flamingo, and now we're going southwest with more rainbows, more flamingos, more Durangos, and going out west with Sahara. When I was probably in 1980, Sahara ended Rainbow. That's where the end of the Sahara was. Rainbow pretty much was 2 lanes south of Tropicana. So you look at that entire southwest. Henderson was a small area. The communities of Henderson and unincorporated Clark County as a community didn't touch. Now you can't find where the county stops and the city begins.
I'd say let's talk about one of the most visible projects that's happened in the past 20 years, the I-215, the Bruce Woodbury Beltway, that people that have come to town maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, they just take it for granted. But this was a roadway that took some very creative planning, imagination, and no local taxpayer dollars. Quite an extraordinary project.
Yeah. The project was initiated to provide some southerly access to the McCarran Airport. And so when it was initiated, the environmental impact study began, I think, around 1988. And it was completed in 92. And at that time, the first segment that was built was access from I-15 to the airport via the airport connector. And the whole environmental document at that time extended from Tropicana in the west down to 95, now 515 in the east side of the valley. So that segment was the full-blown EIS. It was contemplated in 1992 when they had a master transportation plan and a fair share program to fund transportation improvements. And out of that fair share funding program came funding for the Beltway. It was all locally funded. Development taxes and taxes on automobile registration funded the Beltway in that section of town. They continue to fund the rest of the Beltway. After the Beltway was completed pretty much to Tropicana, Summerlin was starting to take shape. And they wanted a town center boulevard kind of through Summerlin. So that became an alignment for the Beltway through Summerlin, and that started the progress northerly on the west side of the Beltway over to the north side of the valley, and then east over to 15. So that was all kind of realized in 1996 to proceed with that portion of the Beltway. We got BLM funding, and by 2003, our plan was to have a whole roadway built from 515 in the south, all the way around the south part of the valley, the west part of the valley, north part of the valley, and tie into I-15 in the north. In 2003, you had that connection. Now we're coming back and making it a full limited access roadway all the way through. It was initially, a couple lanes with ag-grade intersections. Now it's going to be a fully developed freeway.
What are the final segments on your construction on the Beltway now, Dennis?
We just completed the section between Craig Road and Wallapai. That's now fully limited access roadway. We're working on this section from North 5th to UPRR as completing that as limited access. Nevada Department of Transportation is doing the 95 to 15 interchange improvements for that system interchange, and then they're also working on the system interchange at I-15, 215 in the north. So those are the remaining 3 segments that will make it a complete limited access freeway. In the meantime, we've gone back a few times, done some widening. We're still making widening improvements on the initial portions of the Beltway in the south and the west, and we'll continue those around the valley.
People love to talk about traffic, and when you tell people who you are, that you're in Public Works, what's the most frequent question you get?
Why does it take so long to build a roadway? And why are you so far behind? I mean, didn't you know that people were going to be there? Where's the road? So those are the questions that people ask, like, why isn't done sooner? Why does it take so long?
How do you answer those questions?
Primarily is that in order to build a roadway, you have to have the demand, like a mountain's edge. You don't project a demand, you kind of react to the demand unless there's a lot of planning going on. But many of these in the high growth terms era of the county, they just started coming online. I mean, you had Southern Highlands, Mountain's Edge, Summerlin all coming online, Rhodes Ranch, they're all coming along online at pretty much the same time and creating these big master communities. And now they're not adjacent to the existing development. They're in areas that are totally undeveloped, and you got to reach out and connect them with roadways. In many instances, those communities had to build the initial roadways to connect them, and they built those roadways within the limited right-of-way that was available, which wasn't always the complete right-of-way that you had to build the full roadway to 4 lanes or 6 lanes that you might need to service those areas. So you have that. You have to deal with utility constructions. You have to do with the acquisition of right-of-way, because we don't always have the full right-of-way for the roadway, so you got to deal with purchasing property and going through the process of purchasing. And then there's funding. You didn't always have the funding. Funding was always a major issue, and until you developed the funding sources, you couldn't provide for it. And when we had the recession, all the funding kind of shrunk. So a lot of the projects that we were developing in 2005 and 2006, although we had planned to build them and we had funding and our projected funding was there, those projections didn't come to fruition because of the downturn in the economy. So everything kind of got held back. And even with the private communities, it got held back. So it's taken a long time for some roads. Projects that we initiated in the high growth terms are now coming online and coming to fruition, and we're starting to see those come off the drawing boards and now being built in reality, so to speak.
Let's talk about a current project that has been studied for quite a while now, in Maryland Parkway. Now the Board of County Commissioners, or pardon me, the RTC has approved bus rapid transit. What does that mean to you and your folks, and what will Maryland Parkway be required to look like to accommodate this?
I think with the BRT, the bus rapid transit, it'd probably be more dedicated lane. It's a rubber-tired kind of transit proposal, so we won't see as much of a change as if it was a light rail project. So you're going to see there's be widening on the roadway to accommodate some of the bus stops and the shelters that they in, some enhancements, some right turn lanes, particularly if they had the dedicated lane for the BRT. You're going to see those changes, and you probably will see more vehicle congestion if there's the dedicated lanes on that roadway. Right now with the county, the roadway's been, last time we did it was in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and now we're coming back. We're resurfacing the project now as we move today, as we speak. It's being resurfaced. So the BRT is going to change the dynamic of the traffic and the transit interaction along that corridor. And if it's dedicated, it's going to be a little bit more complex than it is today.
And I know you and all the folks here in Public Works and all the Public Works departments around the valley are looking to the future. Where do you see Clark County's Public Works moving forward to in the future?
Public Works will still be doing capital, but we're going to see a lot of more reconstructing of the existing roadway network. You have a lot of roadways out there that have seen their useful life, and now we're going to go more into the reconstruction of existing roadways than the construction of new roadways. We'll fill out the roadway network that ties in Mountain's Edge, fill out the roadway network that ties in to Southern Highlands, and in all those areas in the southwest that are pretty much undeveloped. But you're going to see a lot more existing streets be reconstructed.